Let me just start off today's video by saying, if there's one thing that is going to alter your experience inside of Destiny, whether you're playing this season, next season, or at any point in the future, Destiny is about to change majorly. And that's due to a term called sunsetting. Now, like all sunsets, they're beautiful, right? Watching it go over the horizon. If you're out on the beach, man, you can see it in its full glory, but then that's it. That's the analogy for your weapons and armor, okay? You grind it out, you get to play with it for a day, and then it goes bye-bye. Sound shitty? Well, it is. Logical, but still shitty. Now, this may surprise you. This is actually not the first time we've had sunsetting. We've actually had it a couple times inside of Destiny 1, most notably with the Taken King. Many of our Year 1 weapons got left behind. Fatebringer, Black Hammer, some of the godliest weapons inside of PvE, we had to say bye-bye to. It felt terrible then, which makes us believe it's going to feel terrible now. But see, Destiny 2 started off a little differently. We had sunsetting from Year 1 to Year 2. Going into Forsaken, many of us said goodbye to our Year 1 weapons. Why was that? Because we can finally get random rolls. Granted, there's still some static rolls that you could infuse and use throughout Forsaken, and Augur Dress is a perfect example of that. I used it all throughout Forsaken, very much enjoyed it, but at some point, I came across a weapon with a better random roll. It was in a similar archetype as Inaugural, and eventually, I left behind my Year 1 static rolled weapon. Now, the reason why no one complained about this is because, well, it was voluntarily, right? We chose to leave weapons behind. We chose which weapons to leave behind. But more importantly, a new option came on the horizon that was more valuable, something we wanted, something that we could tangibly see was more potent than what was currently in our hands, which made saying goodbye a tad bit easier. Sunsetting, though, starting next season with the launch of Beyond Light, is not us saying goodbye voluntarily. It's being forced. It's a line being drawn with a numerical value that says that this weapon and this piece of armor will not help you in in-game content. And how Bungie's really going to spin this is they're going to give you in-game content that will drop the new best weapons and the new best armor, thus resulting in us saying goodbye to some of the hardest weapons we have ever grinded for. Let's just go through a quick list. Some weapons you're going to have to say goodbye to starting next season. Luna's Howl, Not Forgotten, Wendigo, 21% Delirium, Recluse, Redrix, Mountaintop, Beloved, Mindbender, Tatara's Gaze, Waking Vigil, one of my favorite hand cannons in this game, and we got to say goodbye to them. Now, what's so heartbreaking about this, and what we haven't truly discussed, is why Bungie is including this version of sunsetting instead of the Year 1 to Year 2 format, the static roll Year 1 to Forsaken format. You see, to me, this is almost like a give-up slide. This is Bungie's way of throwing the towel into the ring and saying, listen, we're out of ideas. You see, if Bungie had a way of revolutionizing weapons going into the new expansion, then we would voluntarily leave behind many of these other pinnacle weapons. You see, I brought up the optimistic idea that maybe pinnacle weapons and pinnacle perks will now be mods that we will be able to slot onto certain weapons. For example, Killing Tally, which is present on 21% Delirium. What if that trait was removed and was either able to be slotted onto other weapons, although limited, say, to just other weapons like auto rifles, or they just randomly roll on other weapons in the game? Maybe other machine guns, maybe auto rifles, maybe pulse rifles, who knows? That's neither here nor there. The point is, I was optimistically looking at this and going, wait, guys. Maybe Bungie is sunsetting because they're wanting to introduce new powerful weapons that will outclass what we currently have. Now, that's overly optimistic. Matter of fact, I defeated my own logic in the previous statement. You see, if Bungie was introducing pinnacle level loot again this coming up season and beyond, then we would voluntarily leave behind 21% Delirium, or Wendigo, or Recluse, or Mountaintop. You wouldn't have to sunset those weapons. We would do it for you. Maybe all I'm gonna look forward to here on out is Grave Robber. Huh? Yeah, let me get that Grave Robber swashbuckler combo. Oh, hell yes. Give me some high impact reserves. You know it. You see, Bungie messed up. They gave us crap in Forsaken. They gave us pinnacle gear every single season. Weapons that were phenomenal, and some more unique than others. And instead of elevating the traits for our other legendary weapons, instead, things just kept getting more and more watered down. There became this leveling that occurred between all the traits, which started in Shadowkeep, and the last stone to topple over for Bungie to get the system that they want, the ecosystem they want when it comes to our weapons, is to finally put pinnacles out of business. You see, fellas, it's a bold strategy to introduce a weapon barely a year later with 0 new traits and perk combinations. You see, a perfect example of this is Gnawing Hunger. What makes this Gnawing Hunger different than this Gnawing Hunger? Nothing outside of an emblem. A little icon, one being a little pyramid ship, the other being the Season of the Drifter icon. Neither one of these rolls differently though. They literally have the same trait combinations. So why in the hell would I regrind for a weapon that I grinded over a year ago. See, Gnawing Hunger, if this is actually supposed to be the benchmark of what's to occur going forward, is a terrible example of sunsetting. Reissuing a gun with nothing new about it has got to be the dumbest thing I've ever seen. I've got a Demolitionist roll here. Wonderful roll. Subsistence as well. Caps out at season 11, which is this season. Won't be able to reach the max cap next season. Now you're telling me I have to regrind barely a year later for the same exact weapon without any difference in trait combinations? Hell, I'm just simply trying to get the exact roll, much less something more desirable. But if Bungie would have introduced a new trait, a couple new traits, then maybe we could have justified it. Maybe I could have been like, listen guys, I know it. You're having to regrind for Gnawing Hunger yet again, but look at these trait combinations. These new traits that are found on this weapon. It is so worth regrinding, but Bungie didn't do that. And even though it is kind of easy to get Gnawing Hunger if you contribute to the season with Umbral Ingrams and Focus Ingrams, it still doesn't matter. It's the concept of it all. The reissuing of a weapon with no real innovation outside of just slapping a new number on it. This bothers me a lot. Now, we refer back to what Luke said. He said it back in February, guys. First, that pinnacle weapons largely sat at the top of the pyramid, that most other legendary weapons are down in the clump of they aren't really that different. Why? Because when every legendary item the team builds is going to be around forever, outliers get weeded out. He stated that back in 2014, the Vault of Glass weapons could be memorable because we knew they weren't going to be in the ecosystem for things like trials, nightfalls, and raids forever. They naturally fall by the wayside because power attack light in those days couldn't make them obsolete. In the world we're imagining, we'll have a space at the top end to create powerful legendary weapons. Legendaries that are just better than other items in the classification will be able to do that because the design space for weapons will expand and contract over time. Items will enter the ecosystem, be able to be infused for some number of seasons, and beyond that, their power won't be able to be raised. Our hope is that instead of having to account for a weapon's viability forever when we create one, it can be easier to let something powerful exist in the ecosystem. And those potent weapons entering the ecosystem means there's more fun times to pursue. Listen, logically, what Luke says from a developer's perspective makes complete sense. But hell, if we start talking logic around here, a double primary system for a balanced sandbox also makes sense. But how'd that go? Now, Luke did end the statement by saying that changes like this also means that legendary weapons or their talents would be shelved, could be reissued at a future date, or could be brought back in fun ways by involving our community. Brought back in fun ways. He did leave a final note at the bottom. We are not applying this to exotic weapons at this time. We want to iterate this for the legendary ecosystem first, which makes me think that they may consider doing this for exotics, which is an absolute hell no. Now, how could they reissue things in a future date in a fun way, a community-driven way, where they could just pull an Age of Triumph like they did back in year 3, and instead of Fatebringer being a legendary weapon, it could be an exotic. Actually, it was called Fatebringer Adept. And there was many raid weapons just like that Bungie brought back, made them exotics, which is what I can definitely see them doing with Pinnacles now. I can see them shelving Not Forgotten, Mountaintop, Wendigo, 21% Delirium, and in the future, bringing them all back as exotics. But will they be able to captivate us in the way they captivate us now? You see, I didn't like that it was almost copy and paste, but with a new paint job, and watching some of these raid weapons be reissued as exotics. Even though it was a fun time doing old raids, I still didn't like that there was no big difference of these weapons from what they were in year 1. The game had already progressed. And by the time Bungie might actually get around to reissuing these pinnacle weapons, I almost feel like the game will have progressed. So much so that we may not even entertain reobtaining these weapons. And considering that we've been on the treadmill grind now, season after season, where it's a constant leveling to do more in-game stuff, to level again, to do more in-game stuff, to level again, to do more in-game stuff, to regrind a Gnawing Hunger yet again. Look, I've been watching many of the weapons that's been reissued to us over and over again. Bungie is being incredibly stingy when it comes to giving us powerful weapons. It's the reason why we have not seen adept weapons yet inside of Trials. It's the reason why Death Adder doesn't even have a damage dealing perk in its trait combinations. This is a dungeon-based weapon, and you don't even give it a damage-based perk. You see, all of this concerns me because if now, with the reissuing of certain weapons from year 1 and even last year, is to be indicative of what's going to occur in September and beyond, I'm not a fan of this. If I gotta grind for a weapon with mediocre rolls just because it has a new light level on it, the hell with that. All right, fellas? The hell with that. And I'm not crapping on Death Adder here because obviously it's better than its static roll version and nowhere near as blatantly offensive as Gnawing Hunger being reissued. I just don't want this to be the norm. No new traits here. None. No damage dealing traits. Nothing to make this more flavorable, more desirable. desirable. At the end of the day, I would take Master of Arms over all of these. And the only reason why we entertain this weapon over Recluse is because we know Recluse is being sunset. We're future-proofing ourselves. That's it. We're just like, oh, we gotta grind this weapon. Hey, man, why are you grinding this weapon? And instead of me looking at you saying, oh, because it's amazing, because you gotta have it, dude. You wouldn't believe what's on this weapon. Instead, I go, oh, Recluse is being retired. Yeah, better get you that SMG now. Oh, and while you're at it, get your Gnawing Hunger 2.0. It's not any different, but it's future-proof. For a time, at least. Again, for a time. I mean, let's not get too ahead of ourselves. There's still a date on all of these weapons. So here are the possible outcomes to all of this. And we haven't even gotten to armor. Armor is being sunset. That's a thing. So stupid. So stupid. I don't like it one bit. The only way I'll be okay with armor being sunset is if we ease up on the freaking mod slot. I'm tired of mod slots. I gotta keep this set of armor to use these mods, keep that set of armor to use that mod, and it's stretching all the way back from like a year and a half ago. It's annoying. Quit it. Open the mod slot up. If you got a new and current set of armor, it should be open to slot any and every mod in that final slot. But I'm not even getting into mod slots today. Armor 2.0. I mean, I am still very much annoyed with how mods, Charge of Light, and everything else work. Is there cool builds? Yes. Is it completely dependent on artifacts? Abso-freaking-lutely. Does it change season to season? Yes. Way too much. Some of my favorite Warmind builds. Is it good anymore? No. Why? Because I don't have Tyrant Surge. There's too much that we optimize for that by the time we even get the perfect build, it's over. The season's over. So much so that I don't even care about making build videos anymore. Yes, there's some good builds out there. You can have fun with them for a season. And then what? You're going to get a new set of armor next season. You're going to have to somehow magically upgrade all these new sets of armor with a bunch of materials that Bungie's being stingy on unless you play at least 8 to 10 hours a day. And then on top of all that, you got to hope you magically come across relatively the same build that you optimized for last season. Oh, but wait, we're going into this new season with new mods. Yeah, what you're optimizing for might not be that optimal because there's this new mod. I really hate the armor system, and I don't like that armor's being sunset, not even a little bit. The only way I might be okay with armor sunsetting is if Bungie just simplified the armor system going forward. But I feel like they should just do that anyways. Hell, why do we got a sunset? In order to gain simplicity and longevity for our builds. Man, that's a shitty trade. Why can't we just get that up front? You see, I have to almost go into this blindly optimistic just to swallow what's being shoveled into my face. When the reality is that sunsetting sucks. It sucks, fellas. That's all it comes down to. To me, the possible outcomes is that weapons going forward will never reach the point of pinnacle. So much so that Bungie even gave up on rituals halfway through this year. And instead of being rewarded for this huge arsenal of weapons that you've kept in your vault, these gems that you've mined and stored, that kill clip to Tara's gaze that you might want to pull out for that match, that could be something that your enemy has not run up against. Nah, none of that. You use what we say you can use for that given year, and that's it. 2 reasons why this is occurring, and I want us to just outline the motive here before I let you go. Reason number 1, Bungie does not like to backlog sandbox changes. Once they introduce an item, they want to be done with it. It's much easier to introduce a Death Adder with your run-of-the-mill trait combinations and be done with it. But you reintroduce Death Adder with Master of Arms, holy hell. We got to make sure that thing's working right. You see, it was a nightmare for Bungie that they've had to go back and pretty much retune every pinnacle weapon. Not Forgotten, Luna's Howl, Recluse. And when you got a development studio that's constantly working on future content, but you're having to pull guys back to work on sandbox fixes to old content, you see where the dilemma occurs. On top of that, there was a number of people complaining that they couldn't get those weapons. They couldn't get Luna's Howl or Not Forgotten. They couldn't get Recluse, couldn't get Mountaintop. PvE players didn't want to have to go inside of PvP to get really good weapons that also were really, really good inside of PvE. And where I do sympathize with that in some ways, there's a lot of times I have to go inside of PvE to get stuff that is good in PvP. That's the magic of Destiny. Do you think I would actually be grinding for a Mind Benders voluntarily if it wasn't a good shotgun inside of PvP? Hell no. But I wanted that quick draw combo. So off to grinding Nightfalls we went. Beloved. You think many PvP players would actually even gone inside of Menagerie if Beloved wasn't one of the best feeling sniper rifles in the game? Hell no. But they did it because it was worth the grind. So I guess that's actually 2 motives, okay? Motive number 1 being Bungie didn't want to have to constantly retune weapons that they've already launched. Motive number 2, they didn't want to face the backlash from people that didn't have the abilities to obtain these weapons. But motive number 3, which is probably one of the biggest motives of them all. It's difficult to sell new seasonal weapons when you've got Daddy Pinnacles on top weighing everything down. An example for Trials, Eye of Soul is a sniper rifle brought to us last season, and many people thought, oh man, Eye of Soul, could it replace Revoker. Has it replaced Revoker? Hell no. Why has it not replaced Revoker? Is it because Revoker's just too good? Well, it does break the ammo economy inside of Elim. And had Bungie actually done something about Reversal of Fortune, maybe, perhaps, Eye of Soul would have had a fighting chance. But a beautiful way to have given Eye of Soul a fighting chance is to given us an in-depth version of Eye of Soul, and possibly made it a low zoom option, considering that it's 45 zoom, which is why a lot of people don't like it over Revoker right now and things like Beloved. A lot of the changes that Bungie says to us, you know, they come out and they go, hey, we're making this change. They're 2 months ahead of that change, all right? I just want you to know that. That TWAB that comes out and says, hey, listen, this change is occurring in the future, they've already moved past that point. Bungie had intentions of cycling out low zoom snipers at some point, which meant at the end of the day, Eye of Soul really never had a fighting chance against Revoker. What I'm saying is, at some point, it gets hard to weigh apples to apples when we got apples to bananas constantly occurring, when Bungie and us as the community are working with two different sets of data. And even though I can understand the logic of why they are doing what they're doing, why they are trying to dethrone Pinnacles so desperately, I think there's too many weapons that get hit in the crossfire. My ringing now. I love this weapon. I mentioned that this is one of the best auto rifles for dealing with champions. I even got a roll right here, Disruption Break and Shield Disorient. Fantastic. So happy to get this roll. Say goodbye. Why? Because we're dethroning Pinnacles. That's really what sunsetting's all about. So guys, that is my thoughts on sunsetting. I think this has been the most negative video I've ever had about a change coming inside of Destiny. You see, I like the scale to go up. I like weapons in the future to be more desirable than what I have now. I don't like settling for mediocre rolls because I've dealt with God rolls. I know what it feels like to have a Luna's Howl in your hand that could kill in 0.67 seconds, which to some people sounds crazy. Oh my God, 0.67 seconds for a hand cannon? Bro, auto rifles can kill 0.7 right now. You see, Bungie's kind of walking themselves in circles when it comes to sandbox changes. They make one sandbox change on the back end to balance Luna's Howl and Not Forgotten and essentially nerf them in the ground. But on the other end, they change auto rifles to be just as powerful as pre-nerf Luna. Why? Why is that? Had you actually timed your auto rifle buff to coincide when Luna's Howl was at the height of its power, then maybe more people would have been okay with how powerful Luna's Howl Not Forgotten was. The rest of them are just no-brainers, okay? And let me just be real about this. I think the people who conceptualize Mountaintop and Recluse have got a beautiful mind. I think the people who signed off on some of the damage values need to have an open conversation on what justifies a good weapon and just a dumb powerful weapon, okay? Recluse hitting 25 damage per body back in its heyday, an absolute no-no. In combination with a Master of Arms perk that didn't even require self-activation. You know why no one complains about Teraba? Because Teraba requires the weapon to be out and about. You can't get the big buff there to its damage unless the weapon is in your hands. And I know some people are running around going, I want a Teraba buff. Sure, we could tweak it a bit, but where it sits is completely acceptable. Recluse was so stupidly powerful that it should have never got past Sandbox. Never. Somebody should have looked at it and said, hey, whoa, whoa, whoa. I understand a 0.47 time to kill value in its crit damage, but in its body shot damage, maybe we should tone that down a bit. And just maybe, had you caught that, you wouldn't have dealt with the backlash that you dealt with when Recluse launched. So guys, those are my thoughts on sunsetting. I don't like it. I think it's going to stifle innovation. I don't think we're going to get weapons in the future that will ever be on the level of Pinnacles. And I know some people are going to go, whoa, whoa, whoa. That's not true. That's why they're getting rid of Pinnacles. I've logically thought this through, okay? And that's what we all say, right? Bungie's being logical. That's why they're doing this. Sunsetting is logical. Okay, well, I'm logically thinking through it. I will voluntarily leave behind Pinnacle weapons if new Pinnacles are introduced in the game that beat it. You wouldn't even have to ask me to sunset things. I'll do it for you. The fact that this feature is being introduced is Bungie's way of systematically controlling the sandbox while giving you low-level motivation to grind for new seasonal content. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.